Hello and welcome to Day 80, Numbers 19 verse 9. A man who is clean is to gather up the cow's ashes and deposit them outside the camp in a ceremonially clean place. The ashes must be kept by the Israelite community for preparing water to remove impurity. It is a sin offering. Then the one who gathers up the cow's ashes must wash his clothes, and he will remain unclean until evening. This is a perpetual statute for the Israelites and for the foreigner who resides with them. The person who touches any human corpse will be unclean for 7 days. He is to purify himself with the water on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a body or a person who has died and does not purify himself defiles the tabernacle of the Lord. That person will be cut off from Israel. He remains unclean because the water for impurity has not been sprinkled on him, and his uncleanness is still on him. This is the law when a person dies in a tent. Everyone who enters the tent and everyone who is already in the tent will be unclean for 7 days, and any open container without a lid tied on it is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches a person who has been killed by the sword or has died, or a human bone, or a grave, will be unclean for 7 days. For the purification of the unclean person, they are to take some of the ashes of the burnt sin offering, put them in a jar, and add fresh water to them. A person who is clean is to take hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle the tent, all the furnishings, and the people who were there. He is also to sprinkle the one who touched a bone, a grave, a corpse, or a person who has been killed. The one who is clean is to sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd day and the 7th day, after he purifies the unclean person on the 7th day. The one being purified must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he will be clean by evening. But a person is unclean and does not purify himself, that the person will be cut off from the assembly because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water for impurity has not been sprinkled on him, he is unclean. This is a perpetual statute for them. The person who sprinkles the water for impurity is to wash his clothes, and whoever touches the water for impurity will be unclean until evening. Anything the unclean person touches will become unclean, and anyone who touches it will be unclean until evening. Chapter 20. The entire Israelite community entered the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and they settled in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. There was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you led us up from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It's not a place of grain, figs, vines, and pomegranates, and there is no water to drink." Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting. They fell down with their faces to the ground, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Take the staff and assemble the community. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and it will yield its water. You will bring out water for them from the rock and provide drink for the community and their livestock." So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels! Must we bring water out of this rock for you?" Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, so that a great amount of water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me to show my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he showed his holiness to them." Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. "This is what your brother Israel says. You know all the hardships that have overtaken us. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt many years. But the Egyptians treated us and our fathers badly. When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we are in Kadesh, a city on the border of your territory. Please let us travel through your land. We won't travel through any field or vineyard, or drink any well water. We will travel the king's highway. We won't turn to the right or the left until we have traveled through your territory." But Edom answered him, "You must not travel through our land, or we will come out and confront you with the sword." "We will go on the main road," the Israelites replied to them, "and if we or our herds drink your water, we will pay its price. There will be no problem, only let us travel through on foot." Yet Edom insisted, "You must not travel through." And they came out to confront them with a large force of heavily armed people. Edom refused to allow Israel to travel through their territory, and Israel turned away from them. After they set out from Kadesh, the entire Israelite community came to Mount Hor. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor on the border to the land of Edom, "Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land, and I have given the Israelites because you both rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up to Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. Aaron will be gathered to his people and die there." So Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they climbed Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. After Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. When the whole community saw that Aaron had passed away, the entire house of Israel mourned for him 30 days. Chapter 21. When the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming on the Anthorim road, he fought against Israel and captured some prisoners. Then Israel made a vow to the Lord, "If you will deliver this people into our hands, we will completely destroy their cities." The Lord listened to Israel's request. The Canaanites were defeated, and Israel completely destroyed them and their cities, so they named the place Hormah. Then they set out from Mount Hor by way of the Red Sea to bypass the land of Edom, but the people became impatient because of the journey. The people spoke against God and Moses. "Why have you led us up from Egypt to die in this wilderness? There is no bread or water, and we detest this wretched food." Then the Lord sent poisonous snakes among the people, and they bit them so that many Israelites died. The people then came to Moses and said, "We have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Intercede with the Lord so that he will take the snakes away from us." And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Make a snake image and mount it on a pole. When anyone who is bitten looks at it, he will recover." So Moses made a bronze snake and mounted it on a pole. Whenever someone was bitten and he looked at the bronze snake, he recovered. Day 80, Psalm 36, verse 1 through 6. An oracle within my heart concerning the transgression of the wicked. There is no dread of God before his eyes, for in his own eyes he flatters himself too much to discover and hate his sin. The words of his mouth are malicious and deceptive. He has stopped acting wisely and doing good. Even on his bed he makes malicious plans. He sets himself on a path that is not good and does not reject evil. Lord, your faithful love reaches to heaven, your faithfulness to the skies. Your righteousness is like the highest mountain, your judgments like the deepest sea. Lord, you preserve man and beast. Proverbs, chapter 8, verses 25 and 26. I was brought forth before the mountains and hills were established, before he made the land, the fields, or the first soil on the earth. Mark, chapter 15, verse 22. And they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. Then they crucified him and divided his clothes, casting lots for them to decide what each would get. Now it was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge written against him was, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 criminals with him, one on his right and one on his left. So the scripture was fulfilled that says, "And he was counted among outlaws." Those who passed by were yelling insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha! The one who would demolish the sanctuary and build it in 3 days. Save yourself by coming down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests with the scribes were mocking him to one another and saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross so that we may see and believe." Even those who were crucified with him were taunting him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at 3 Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi lema sabachthani," which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "Look, he's calling for Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge filled with sour wine, fixed it on a reed, offered him a drink, and said, "Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." But Jesus let out a loud cry and breathed his last. Then the curtain of the sanctuary was split in 2 from top to bottom. When the centurion who was standing opposite him saw the way he breathed his last, he said, "This man really was God's son." There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, the younger, and of Joses and Salome. When he was in Galilee, they would follow him and help him. Many other women had come up with him to Jerusalem. When it was already evening, because it was preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Josephus Arimathea, a prominent member of the Sanhedrin who was himself looking forward to the kingdom of God, came and boldly went into Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had already died. When he found out from the centurion, he gave the corpse to Joseph. After he brought some fine linen, he took him down and wrapped him in the linen. Then he placed him in a tomb cut out of the rock and rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb. Now Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were watching where he was placed.